Story 1: We deserve better. Trump has undermined the national park system, which is the best in the world, generating $55 billion in revenue while only costing $3 billion in the budget. Yet, the decision was made to cut funding to save money. The oppressive tactics have made people afraid to visit because they worry they will be targeted or trapped. We are rapidly becoming isolated, turning against our allies while aligning with oppressive regimes. Why on earth would anyone want to come here? Story 2: As an American, it is unfortunate. However, we brought this upon ourselves and we voted for it. Continue to boycott us and withhold your tourist dollars. That is acceptable to me. America often learns the hard way and tends to do the right thing only after exhausting all other options. Story 3: I feel that's pretty much what will happen when you deport scientists who are trying to attend a conference or detain students without due process because they expressed opinions you disagree with, impose tariffs on allies, threaten to annex sovereign nations, cut jobs that ensure the safety of airplanes, include journalists in unsecured group discussions about plans to attack adversaries, and then lie about it, acting in a disrespectful manner overall. Just to mention a few examples. Story 4: I believe that is a natural response we should expect from having an aggressive, expansionist leader. Story 5: If you live in a border town, you know people on the other side, and it is sad to see them struggling as businesses close. However, when individuals are searched and detained without cause, it becomes a place you do not want to visit. I will not see America for a very long time, and I can see it from my house. Story 6: As a Canadian tourist, it is disappointing. I enjoy spending my winters in the United States. I have been coming to Arizona every winter for the past 12 years. However, this year I am not feeling the enthusiasm. Therefore, I am exploring options like Belize, Malta, Portugal, and Spain. The world is vast. Story 7: As a Canadian, I feel that the United States and Canada maintained a positive relationship for a long time until the current president of the United States made decisions that negatively affected it. I empathize with the Americans who may face challenges to their livelihoods due to the poor decisions made by their government. If they voted for that individual, they have no one else to blame but themselves. Story 8: Good. We chose the clown, so let the circus begin. I oppose this regime and hope everything they do fails. Story 9: If you mean from foreigners, they should not come to the United States. Even if you are English, Irish, or Australian, it is not safe to be a foreigner in the United States at this time. If you mean domestically, yes, a prolonged recession that we are pretending is not a recession will have that effect. Story 10: Great opportunity to visit popular sites without crowds, unless you are Canadian, Mexican, European, Asian, brown, black, or part of the LGBTQ community. Story 11: I live next to a national park in a college ski town. Last night at a party, nobody mentioned politics, but there were many statements that began with, "But now." People who manage public lands are being laid off and rehired. The mountains did not receive as many skiers as expected. The university is laying off staff and is hesitant to hire anyone. Downtown shops, bars, and hotels are anticipating a quiet summer. The construction industry is struggling to find the help they usually have. It is not just one sector that will be affected. It is everything. Story 12: The population overall voted for fascism and, surprise, they got it. The consequences were entirely predictable. I'm not sure of the tourism figures for Germany in 1939. Will organizations like Visit America even exist to entice tourists who enjoy being detained in chains and unable to mildly criticize their leader? Story 13: Speaking as someone living in Canada, I believe we can improve and increase our current drop rate from 70% to 85 to 90%. Story 14: Genuinely, other than New York City being the best city of all time, why would anyone visit here instead of anywhere in Europe? Story 15: To non-Americans, how do you feel about the prospect of spending just one day without hearing about Americans? Is it too much to ask? An impossible fantasy? Story 16: As a Canadian, I feel great about this. I'm glad my fellow Canadians are not spending their money in America. Story 17: It feels like having an abusive parent who intentionally antagonizes and hurts our friends to isolate and control us. Story 18. There are travel warnings being issued. It is no longer a safe country to visit. As a queer European, I would be detained and sent to a camp. No thanks. Story 19. The people working in the tourism industry will be fortunate to get through this. That is unfortunate. Story 20. I am the child of refugees. My main concern is whether my parents will be deported and if my citizenship might be revoked despite being born here. I worry about the possibility of being taken or detained because my name is difficult to pronounce. Story 21. Justified. For the Americans, maybe they will stop taking their democracy for granted and stop voting for the party despite their flaws. Republicans vote for the most morally corrupt individuals simply because they believe, in their minds, that these candidates offer the best chance to defeat their rivals. It has become a popularity contest that has expanded into a personality cult. Sometimes you have to break things in order to fix them. Trump and Elon have a very good chance of burning everything to the ground. Perhaps a hard dose of reality will wake people up. In the meantime, I hope the Americans are mindful of their financial responsibilities. Story 22. Do not come here. Many of us who live here do not even want to be here. But honestly, resist this regime in any way you can to help us. Put your travel money elsewhere. Story 23. I am glad I can visit places in the United States more easily, but I feel sad for the families who rely on tourism and are struggling due to the decisions of those in power. Story 24. This will devastate several tourist-dependent areas. What makes it worse is the reason behind it. The misguided actions of a narcissistic individual who not only repels tourists but also makes threats that compromise their safety. If he and his troubles vanished tomorrow, our tourism reputation would be tarnished for a long time, if not permanently. Story 25. The individuals who voted for this are likely rejoicing. They harbor animosity toward everyone except themselves. I, for one, am glad that foreigners are protecting themselves from the regime. Story 26. As someone in a resort town, I find it awesome. However, the reason for the decline is utterly shameful. Story 27. If I lived outside the United States, I would not want to travel here. Every day, a new travel advisory is issued, and unmarked cars are picking people up off the street and sending them who knows where. The place has really become chaotic and is full of negativity, so I can't blame them. Story 28. Its leader is attempting to label the rest of the world's people as undesirable. You reap what you sow. I will not go anywhere where I am not liked, and I am a citizen of a country that is generally well liked around the world. Story 29. As it should be. I do not even want to be here. Donald Trump has made it embarrassing to be an American. I cannot say that I blame tourists. Story 30. People who live here do not want to spend money here. How can we blame them for going out of their way to spend money? Story 31. The country needs to reach a turning point. It has become addicted to fear and hate, and like any addict, it requires hitting rock bottom to overcome this addiction. Story 32. As an American living in a tourist hub in the USA and working in the tourism and hospitality industry, I find it rewarding. Story 33. I grew up in a resort town. A tourism economy employs people but does not enrich them. It turns towns into sets, as the needs of a living town are subsumed under the needs of the tourists whose wallets keep the town alive. You've heard of zombie businesses? Businesses that are only alive because of favorable conditions? That applies to towns as well. Story 34. The value of tourism to the United States is around $2.6 trillion a year. Trump will need to increase tariffs to compensate for this revenue as it gradually declines. Story 35. Tourism is dying. It's as though Trump has imposed a tariff on his own country. When residents are moving overseas, why would tourists want to come? Story 36. Proud of other countries for not tolerating the deceit of the wealthy. It is time for the affluent to take responsibility for the influence they have on elections. Story 37. It is difficult to determine without a source or a clear definition of United States tourism. Are you referring to foreign tourism to the United States, domestic tourism within the United States tourists traveling to other countries, or all of the above. It may not be a good sign, but it's challenging to assess without a clearer context. Story 38. Understandable. No one wants to go to a country where the leader is trying to become a fascist dictator and has secret police disappearing people, especially foreigners. Story 39. I am traveling because I made commitments before the election, and I honor my commitments. However, after these last trips are completed, my work and leisure travel will be spent in countries that do not want to make us the 51st state. My bottom line is hopefully not going to take a significant hit as my accountant is forecasting. The United States can get bent. Elbows up. Story 40. Good. Maybe then this country will finally recognize the need to invest in itself. Infrastructure projects will enhance the country and provide well-paying jobs. Unfortunately, none of this will happen until some kind of crisis occurs. Story 41. I personally vowed to never visit any red state after the Capitol riot. I don't engage with anyone from those states in my blue state either. I want nothing to do with those who betray the country my family fought for and defended while wearing a badge. Story 42. As an American, I have advised people not to come to the United States right now. We are very unstable for the foreseeable future. Story 43. I wouldn't visit a country that would arrest me for minor offenses and send me to a prison known for human rights abuses. I would stay as far away as possible. I wish I could leave. Story 44. Most of us wouldn't notice because tourism is a small part of our national economy, but it's understandable given Trump's poorly considered policy. The contribution to gross domestic product from domestic tourism is 7.6%. While the contribution from international tourism is 1.9%. It is important to note that the 1.9% will not completely disappear, but it is likely to be negatively affected to some extent. Story 45. I believe it reflects the reputation of the nation. I am uncertain if I feel sad about the loss of tourism dollars, or if I am happy because it means fewer tourists. In the long term, I would prefer to live in a welcoming place that people want to visit rather than an authoritarian area that people hesitate to visit. Story 46. No one cares. It's not like the tourist attractions are empty. Is there any factual information indicating that tourism has even dropped on a trend? This is likely just another instance of misleading clickbait. Story 47. Not a supporter of former President Trump, but I feel like Reddit is the Fox News of the left, and I'm being told everything is terrible for some reason. My life and the lives of those around me haven't changed at all. To clarify, I'm not wealthy. Is tourism changing? I have absolutely no idea, and it hasn't affected me in any way. I keep hearing about tariffs, taxes, and various issues, but nothing tangible has happened. So that's how I feel. I don't really care about upvotes or downvotes as you read this. Not surprisingly, they also mean nothing. Story 48. Much deserved, and hopefully the beginning of a significant shift that will lead to Congress finally standing up and removing this petty tyrant. But we are stuck with this situation until the pain becomes too great to ignore, at which point it is uncertain whether the United States will maintain any global influence or respect. Story 49. As someone who relies heavily on tourism for their livelihood, this situation is concerning. In general, I hope foreign tourists stay away from this hostile nation for their own preservation and protection, and that enough pain is felt to affect positive change. This is a frustrating time to be living in. Story 50. I strongly disapprove of this administration and will do whatever it takes to remove them from power. Story 51. What is there to see besides the geography? There is a Starbucks here, a Target over there, and a Walmart way over there. It's the same everywhere. Story 52. As a Canadian, I am excited to see our country unite. I am indifferent to the impact on the United States. Story 53. I feel sad because I love meeting tourists at work, and they contribute to my income. However, I cannot blame them at all. I wouldn't travel here either. Story 54. Since there is nothing I can do about it, I guess I will enjoy the shorter lines at Disney and visit my friend in Canada. Story 55. If you ask the people for whom this question was probably intended, you would either get the answer that they don't care or that they don't want foreigners in the land of the free anyway. Story 56. It is unfortunate for those in the tourism industry, but I will be happy that places are less crowded. Story 57. As an American, this is like asking how I feel about my sore throat when I have a serious illness. I don't feel great, but there are other issues that demand more of my attention. Story 58. As an American who will likely feel the impact on the economy personally, I still think it's good. Sometimes the best way for a child to learn not to play with fire is to get burned, and there are many people in the United States who exhibit the mental capacity of children. Story 59. Good for them. I'm trying to avoid this administration as much as possible financially too. If I believed any other country would accept me, I would be there. Story 60. I'm in Canada and am not concerned about U.S. tourism. The Canadian government is spreading misinformation that the United States is unsafe for foreign travelers. Story 61. I was getting ready to visit. I have friends all over and my partner was meant to be on tour, so we would meet up here and there. We would have traveled to places like Atlanta, Denver, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Oakland, Washington, and Portland. I wouldn't dare go now. No one sensible would. Story 62. If you voted for Kamala Harris for President of the United States, then I am very sorry if this decline in tourism affects you. If you voted for fascism or if you did not vote at all, then good luck. Story 63. It is just a small part of the disappointment I feel with what is happening in the country since Trump took office. Story 64. Buyer's remorse. It is difficult to feel much sympathy for Americans who ordered the unpleasant soup and then complained that there were undesirable ingredients in it. Later, they returned 4 years later and asked if that unpleasant soup was still available. Story 65. Plenty of tourism will flourish this year. Some narratives may portray it as a negative period, but the reality is more optimistic. Story 66. I will believe it when I see it, if it is truly more than just a brief moment. Do not get me wrong, I want the administration to experience consequences, and the people who voted for Donald Trump, but I have no faith in humanity to do the right thing. That is why I say I will believe it when I see it. For now, it is just a brief moment. Story 67. I believe it is a natural consequence of the current political situation. I feel sad for the small business owners who will be most affected and hope enough Americans will support them until tourism recovers. I also hope our current administration will recognize how much we need other countries to remain strong and that we should all work together in this world rather than trying to divide and conquer. Story 68. There is nothing to feel about it. It is bad for the economy. Therefore, the voters will have to make the choices. Story 69. I'm afraid that the 2025 Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta won't be very international. Story 70. As a Canadian, I feel partly responsible. I would have loved to go to Vermont, but I will visit the eastern townships in Quebec instead. Story 71. It was a self-inflicted wound, and aside from shooting ourselves in the foot, we likely are regretting what will happen to the national parks. Story 72. Not surprised. America lost its sense of welcome in just a few months, and we can only hold ourselves accountable. Story 73. It's one of 1,000 ways that undermining our allies, threatening to invade them, and imposing tariffs without warning just to feel powerful is a poor decision. Working with our allies isn't woke or liberal. It is simply good business. Story 74. Question to Americans, whom I still call brothers and sisters as a Canadian despite your president. Do you think Americans will travel outside the United States any less, thus reducing the impact of lower U.S. tourism? Our dollar is 70 cents, so will you travel to Canada more or will you stay away? Story 75. Over 10 years ago, I had a conversation with a Portuguese friend who had already decided it wasn't worth coming to the United States as a tourist because he might be hassled by law enforcement. I was surprised, but before I could argue, I suddenly realized I couldn't really guarantee that he would be perfectly safe from the police. I had read too many recent news stories about random people being rounded up and mistreated. That was a sad moment. There are so many great things to see in the United States. I dislike not being able to recommend that people visit. Story 76. Who would want to visit a nation in the midst of a coup? It is reminiscent of the types of situations the Central Intelligence Agency has created around the world for decades, but without the political assassinations. Story 77. I am dancing in the rain. I feel good. The only way the United States will get back to respecting and appreciating its allies and trade partners is by having as much impact as possible on the American economy. I love that so many countries have issued travel warnings against visiting the United States. With the recent arrests of legitimate PhD candidates and other university students, I expect the amount of income flowing to the United States from those seeking higher education will also greatly decline. The United States has treated the entire world as inconsequential, existing only to pad its profits. Meanwhile, we have held our tongue while hosting the most overbearing, conceited, and odious typical Americans who have trampled through, littered, and defaced our important spaces. It is time for reasonable and natural consequences. Their comeuppance. Story 78. I believe people are being intelligent. America is becoming a dangerous place, especially if you are not a citizen. If I go on holiday, I want to be somewhere I can relax and enjoy myself without having to look over my shoulder. Story 79. I am happy about it. My complimentary room offers in Las Vegas have been great for the last month. I just hope that they stop visiting Las Vegas permanently. It will be beneficial for Americans traveling to Las Vegas. Story 80. I don't care. It is unfortunate for people in tourism, though. However, it can be unpleasant to visit a place crowded with buses full of tourists. Story 81. I am overjoyed. Any obvious repercussions of this situation should stand for something. I wish people would stop listening to echo chambers and see the writing on the wall. Story 82. Given that your president exhibits xenophobic behavior and has immigration and customs enforcement detaining non-Americans, I would not want to go on holiday there. Story 83. I would be happy to visit anywhere here with fewer crowds, but I just want to leave as soon as possible. I will be vacationing outside of the United States this year, where there is a lower chance of encountering the people who voted for this situation. Story 84. I understand the situation. Being from San Diego, it saddens me for those who depend on it. Those who are typically lower income, such as servers and drivers, will face challenges, but it will significantly impact the hotel owners who support Trump. Story 85. Unfortunate for those who didn't vote for the Republican ticket, but as a Canadian, I won't spend time or money visiting the home of my serial abuser. Story 86. As a country, we deserve what is coming, but as someone who works in tourism, it feels awful. Only in the past year or so did we see a recovery from COVID-19, and that is all going away now. I cannot blame anyone for not visiting. The consequences are too high if something goes wrong. What Trump is doing will take decades to undo. In a matter of weeks, he has destroyed nearly a century of trust. Story 87. For everyone saying, we deserve it. Do you realize that this is cutting off our nose to spite our face? Declining tourism isn't a teachable moment for this administration. They don't care and they won't learn a lesson. It will only succeed in making our already struggling economy worse, resulting in even fewer jobs for Americans, even for those of us who dislike the president. I can't be happy about it. Story 88. Makes me sad. Nothing makes me happier as an American than when someone visits and is happy to be here. I remember from 2003 to 2007 the world really disliked us. Feels like that now, only worse in some ways. I don't like being disliked. Story 89. As a non-American, I say good. To be clear, I sympathize with the people who voted for Harris, but that doesn't change the fact that their country has a leader who is burning bridges left and right. We have our own interests to look out for, and we really don't want to support a country with fascist tendencies. Story 90. I have no feelings about it because it was inevitable. I see no reason for people to visit a country moving toward instability with many heavily armed citizens who regularly cause mass shootings. I am a bit surprised it took this long to get here. Story 91. The United States is still the largest economy in the world, and tourism is a minor part of its economy. Instead of individuals worldwide spending their money in America by visiting, they should invest more in tourism in developing countries. These countries need tourist dollars more than the United States does. Story 92. I live in a tourist town. I retired here, so I am fine, but the businesses in town will suffer significantly, and that means my friends will be affected. Story 93. Not surprising. Who wants to take a chance on injury or illness, putting them in debt for years or decades when there is little risk of it happening in over 50 other countries you can visit? Story 94. I want to see the biggest economic depression our country has ever experienced. Please refrain from coming here, everyone. If you live here and can leave even temporarily, please do so. If you cannot leave, consider reducing your purchases, especially since the tariffs will make items unaffordable. I want those who promote hate and discrimination to feel the consequences of their actions. Story 95. I am completely fine with it. I prefer that tourists are safe and enjoy their time in a country where they can relax without worrying about being unlawfully detained or worse. Why would anyone want to vacation in the United States while constantly looking over their shoulder in fear? Until we start acting like civilized adults, we should reconsider having people spend their hard-earned money and time off work to visit our country. Story 96. Our public transit and infrastructure are inadequate. Our national parks are being diminished, and our cities are mostly unsafe. Many people are uninformed and often unkind to foreigners. The quality of our food is generally poor and overpriced. Most of our tourist attractions and museums are costly compared to other parts of the world. Our culture feels hollow with everything sold to the highest bidder. The state of our healthcare system is equally concerning. It's disheartening. I hope we can improve and align with the standards of the developed world. Story 97. I used to feel special because I have a visa for the United States, and most people in my country cannot obtain one. Now I no longer feel that way. Story 98. I think it is very wise for foreigners to avoid coming to the United States. It is not a very safe and welcoming place at the moment. All of the travel warnings are valid. Story 99. It will be difficult for areas reliant on tourism. Unfortunately, that is understandable. If I did not live here, I certainly would not choose to vacation here these days. Story 100. If I were going on vacation, I wouldn't feel comfortable going to the United States right now for many reasons. It's expensive, clearing customs seems uncertain, and supporting a country that has waged economic warfare on the world and is threatening its allies does not seem safe. This is particularly concerning when the administration is sending people to El Salvador and Guantanamo without due process. Story 101. I know a Canadian who canceled a trip to the United States due to concerns about what might happen at the border. They have a passport and it would just be a quick weekend. However, because they have some health conditions, they are worried that if something goes wrong and a border guard is having a bad day, they might be detained for a while and end up really suffering. I wish I could tell them it's fine. The worst that could happen is that they would be turned away. But can I, in good faith, say that? Honestly, I want to see that the policies actually have an impact, so while I'm sad my friend isn't making the trip they wanted, I'm glad they're not just ignoring the situation. I'm spending a week in Canada this summer on a trip that was booked before recent events. I'm happy to spend my money there. Story 102. The United States has become a dangerous country. Our government is unstable, and people are disappearing from the streets. Other countries are right to issue travel warnings. Story 103. Of course it is. Trump is essentially disrespecting every country whose citizens can afford to vacation here, and he is driving the price to do so up. Did he not see this coming? He clearly did not, as he is a profoundly ignorant individual with no foresight whatsoever. However, some of the advisors around him are intelligent enough to have anticipated this outcome and likely influenced him to inflict significant damage on the U.S. economy. This situation is just beginning. Story 104. This is what many people voted for. I live in the Northeast, and I am sure Boston and New York City will be significantly affected. However, the vacation areas along the New Hampshire and Maine coast will be severely impacted due to Canadians from Montreal, Quebec, not coming down. That is a majority of their business that is just evaporating. Story 105. As a Canadian, I find it unfortunate that fewer people will have the opportunity to visit the United States. It is a beautiful place with many amazing sights and significant accomplishments. However, the current administration is making it less appealing to travel there, which seems to be their intention. Story 106. I am more familiar with Florida tourism since I lived there for a couple of years. It has a large concentration of Canadians who stay there during the winter months. Many of the beach towns rely on these seasonal visitors for a significant portion of their income. Given the number of Canadians who have already canceled their plans, I imagine it will take quite a toll on the local economies. Story 107. If losing billions of dollars that international tourism brought to the economy directly harmed Trump and his administration, I would be leading parades down every main street in the country. But it doesn't affect them at all. The decline is causing significant financial devastation for the people who rely on tourism and cross-border shopping for their livelihoods. There are reports of small businesses going out of business because they cannot meet their financial obligations. More will follow. The winter tourist season is coming to a close, and the businesses that cater to snowbirds manage this season, but they will not be so lucky next fall. Many motels and inns have reported receiving cancellations from visitors who have wintered with them for years or even decades. Summer tourist hosts are also receiving cancellations. Many snowbirds who own homes in popular winter destination states are putting them on the market and vowing not to return. Others are spending as little money as possible while they are still in the South. Travelers who had plans to visit tourist destinations such as Disneyland and Disney World are choosing instead to explore their own countries, visit Mexico, South America, Europe, and Asian countries. For the increased tourist bookings to other destinations, the world should collectively thank Trump for the financial boost to their respective economies. I truly wonder how much more winning the country formerly known as the United States can endure. Story 108. It should be on the decline. It is not safe for any non-white foreigners to come through our customs or be on our soil. We are making enemies of our closest allies while getting closer to Russia. Our tourism should decline. Story 109. I don't care much. I can't even get into Yosemite anymore, and I live 2 hours away. It might end up being nice for a little while. Story 110. As an American, I am saddened by the current situation, but I fully support anyone choosing to spend their vacation dollars elsewhere. I believe in voting with your values and your wallet, and I question how safe some people might feel entering the country. I understand that a lot of trust has been broken, and it may take generations to repair it. However, the United States is a beautiful country, and I hope we can once again earn visits from foreign tourists. Story 111. Good. As an American, it is what our government deserves. Trump does not care about the American people, but maybe he will care about American corporations. Story 112. I feel great about it. You all made your bed. Now it's time to lie in it. Perhaps enough people who voted for the former president will realize what a mistake it was and put an end to the lunacy. Story 113. I wish people would stay home from Oahu. The decrease in tourists would be beneficial so we can focus on our aging infrastructure. Water, electricity, bridges, roads, sidewalks, and beaches need care and maintenance. Story 114. I would advise anyone to avoid this. I work in higher education, and anyone there knows that if you are a decent university, we need talented individuals from abroad. If I were assisting anyone with a work visa, I would recommend reconsideration. I am concerned for our international students. Story 115. The challenge of protesting lies in maintaining employment. However, the increase in unemployment due to the failure of businesses may result in a greater number of people available to protest. Story 116. It feels appropriate. If I were Canadian, especially, I would spend my vacation dollars elsewhere. The insulting and dismissive attitude of United States government representatives towards our neighbors and longtime allies is shameful and self-defeating. Fortunately, the vast majority of United States citizens do not share this administration's perspective and do not support these actions. Unfortunately, whether they agree with or support the policies, they will suffer from the fallout until we can make a change. Story 117. I think it is great. I love national parks. but they are getting overcrowded. I welcome anything to keep the crowds away. Story 118. It means nothing to us. America's economy isn't reliant in any way on foreign tourism, and it's temporary. The United States will always be a desirable tourist destination, and whatever dip is happening right now won't last. Story 119. It will return after Trump is gone, much like how people drive to see the aftermath of a fire or explosion. Story 120. It is terrible. It is so unnecessary. We should be thriving right now along with Canada. However, we have a greedy individual and his team of opportunists messing everything up for everyone so they can have more money. Story 121. Every major tourist attraction, amusement park, and national park I have visited in the last 10 years has been filled with large groups of foreign tourists wandering around in clusters in touring buses, shouting and carrying flags to identify themselves, making everything crowded and noisy. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.